Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Maybe could someone pull the doors to at the back? Is that possible? Laura, can you... Joel's on it, thank you. Thank you for coming to the Syon and Brentford Area Forum. We didn't know how many people would turn out on the 18th of December, so you guys clearly are the hardcore. Well done, great to see you here. I'm Dan, I'm the councillor, the chair, I'm a councillor in Syon and Brentford Lock. So item number 1 is apologies for absence, declarations of interest. We got any apologies? It's a full house. And I assume members have all read the monitoring officer's guidance on declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? No. Great. So, by the way, the police, as recently in the last area forum, they're not making a presentation. The police have been in the marketplace. Yes, Emily. And if you did want to speak to them, they'll be here for another 30 minutes. But I'd go and talk to them now if you want to. Well, in that case, we're going to move straight on to agenda item number 2, which is Jefferson is here, and he's going to talk to us about traffic issues and roadworks around Brentford, and then we're going to have Sabeel Khan. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Councillor. Good evening, everyone. I am aware and I have a great deal of sympathy for some of the challenges we've had on the road network around Brentford. Some of them were unavoidable, unfortunately, but nevertheless, please accept my apologies for the inconvenience caused. And I know one of our schemes, Cycleway 9, is still in progress, and that continues to cause a degree of disruption. So I think there are 3 key issues that have emerged in recent weeks, or recent months. The first one being the works on the M4. I have to reiterate and stress, as I've done on so many occasions through some of you who've written to me via email and those I've spoken to in previous forums. The works on the M4 is a TfL and National Highways scheme. The council is not responsible for those works. Those are very, very necessary works maintenance activities for the safety of the M4 elevated section. They're very disruptive in nature, they're very extensive, and they're not the kind of works you can postpone. I think one only has to look back to what happened a few years ago with the Morandi Bridge in Genoa to see why it's so important to maintain bridges and such structures when they are coming towards the end of their design life. You will also have noticed that in recent weeks, I think on the 9th of December, half of those works were completed. So the western piers on the M4 and Windmill Road was reopened. That, I hope, has eased traffic congestion a little bit around that area. Unfortunately, the eastern bit of the works, due to the extensiveness of it, will carry on from now until mid-February is under the current program. But by mid-February, we expect the works to be completed and National Highways will demobilize. I'm trying to arrange a briefing session with ward councillors before Christmas or during the very early part of next year with Connect Plus and National Highways as to the way forward. They've also committed to providing us with a full program of works of their investment plans over the next few years so that we can begin to assess what impacts those work may have in future. But the headline is the western bit is done, Windmill Road is reopened, and the eastern section will be reopened in February. In terms of the works on Brentford High Street, we initially introduced 3-way traffic signals to be able to manage the volume of traffic emerging from the Morrisons. But actually, having gathered data for the first couple of months, it became very clear that the 3-way traffic signals were not needed, hence they were removed. Unfortunately, we have to make decisions based on evidence, and that's a very clear case. We had to gather evidence for a reasonable period of time before making a determination. And the determination was that that's not needed, hence those signals were removed. Again, I can see that that has made a real difference to traffic on the high street. Ongoing works, we have Cycleway 9, which is on an 8-month program. I appreciate that that is also causing some disruption. I would say please bear with us. It's on an 8-month program. It's a significant piece of infrastructure being constructed. It's one of the biggest cycleway projects in London currently. Try as we might, it's impossible to deliver a scheme of that size and of that complexity without some disruption to traffic. So that's unavoidable, unfortunately. We will do everything we can to make sure that it stays on program and it's finished in June next year as planned. But I'm afraid there is very little I have to level with you. It's just not possible to deliver it without some disruption to traffic. And we'll manage that the best we can. So I think those were the 3 main issues, but happy to take any further questions.
Thanks, Jefferson. Do we want to let Sabeel weigh in, just in case he covers any questions that might arise, and then if you both want to take the questions, if that's all right?
Thank you, Councillor. Just to reiterate what Jefferson said, it has been an unfortunate imperfect storm with the combination of the works on the M4, the works for C9, and all of the development works on Brentford High Street as well for the last year and a half. That has unfortunately caused all of these difficulties with local traffic and things like that. I've got some statistics from Hounslow Highways that actually talked about, for this calendar year to date, as of yesterday, 31 works permits were approved and granted to statutory undertakers, utility companies, developers for various pieces of work on some of the main roads within Hounslow, within Brentford, I should say. Interestingly, 32 permits were refused because of the extra complications and the extra conflicts they would have added onto the traffic in the local area as well. So Hounslow Highways, who run our street works permitting scheme with third-party suppliers and third-party promoters, they're assessing each and every one of those applications that come in to see what are they for, are they avoidable, can they be delayed, can they be put on a different timescale or a different methodology. So 31 approved, 32 rejected as well. And like I said, like Jefferson said as well, the M4 works done by National Highways, it's important to note as well that they were on pause for about 6 weeks during the Queen's funeral period, just to allow that cortege to get through safely and quickly as possible. And unfortunately, for the extent of the works, they couldn't just stop on the Friday and restart on the Monday. There was a demobilizing period, getting everything on site, and it took 6 weeks to get them back on. So they were 6 weeks off their own program as well because of that.
Great, thank you very much. And also, I always ask speakers to take only 5 minutes. They always go over, but both of you were under, so I appreciate that very much. Now, do we have any questions? Julie, straight away, as always, is first in. Julie, just wait for the mic if you can, just so everyone can hear the question.
Right, cheers. First of all, you've just stated about the M4 and the eastbound being shut since the Queen's funeral. Well, that was 2022, so we've actually gone another 4 months with it. Now, we're still going through the same issues. Yet again, you haven't mentioned about the traffic itself on the Ealing Road, because yet again, South Ealing Road is Hounslow, part of it, and Ealing Road is Hounslow, but you haven't mentioned about the issues we are having with traffic. You can be stuck on traffic for half, and now it's only, okay, the lights have changed a little bit, but you only get lesser cars through, bikes get through, and then you're back on a red light. It still needs to go back and someone to say, for the last 20 odd years, it worked all right, there wasn't accidents, but now it's causing more issues with road rage
Julie,
than anything.
Just to clarify, you're referring to the changing of the phasing of the traffic lights?
Phasing of the lights, and literally you've talked about the M4. Yeah, we know there's going to be roadworks going, and that holds up. But I brought this up last 3 months ago, and it still seems to be the same. And I think someone from Hounslow Council Traffic Control should be going for the TfL or highways and saying, come on, get your act together, because we're supposed to be saving the environment and we're wasting it by sitting around with cars running and not getting anywhere.
Thank you, Julie. So the question is on the change phasing on the traffic lights.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Madam. I think you're absolutely right. The issues at that junction have been of great concern to us for some time. We have been in discussion with Transport for London for some time now about the timing of the green light. They accept that there's a problem. Unfortunately, the replacement of the traffic signal is something that they feel that they absolutely have to do, because it has come to the end of its design life. Once that happens, if they don't replace it, they'll be taking a risk as an organization, and they're not prepared to take that risk. So this was subject to very extensive discussions, several meetings between my team and TfL to see if we can find a way around it. Unfortunately, ultimately, traffic signals are maintained by TfL, and they are the ones who decide when assets have to be replaced. So ultimately, we can only plead, cajole, persuade, but ultimately the decision is theirs. So their decision is to replace it. Unfortunately, the works on the M4 means that the work that they need to do to be able to increase the green light timing cannot be done, because it requires, they have to monitor steady state situation. And at the moment, that junction is hardly steady state with the works taking place on the M4. So they have to wait until the works on the M4 are finished, then they start looking at how they can increase the green light. The improvements that you've seen is as a result of discussions we had with TfL a few months ago. So they have increased it slightly by a few seconds, but clearly that's not enough. But before they can do anything more substantial, they have to wait for the work on the M4 to be complete and for the traffic to return to normal levels so that they can know that they're comparing apples with apples. At the moment, if they were to make any changes to it, it may well create further problems elsewhere. So unfortunately, that's the situation. Hopefully, if the works are finished in February as planned, then hopefully TfL will be able to return to do further assessments.
Thank you, Jefferson. Any other questions? Paul? Just wait for the microphone if you can, just so I can hear.
Okay. I have to say I'm not impressed by being told just live with it, which is what the impact I've had. I mean, for 40 years, I've been driving 2 or 3 times a week up to Shepherd's Bush to do a voluntary job. And it used to take me 25 to 45 minutes to get there. Over the last years, it's got incredibly difficult. In the last 2 years, I reckon it's now gone from 25 to an hour and a half to get there. And there are 2 things about that. It's one, if I don't know how long it's got to take, I now have to leave an hour earlier than I need to. I get there very early sometimes, and I still get there late at other times. So I'm really got stressed up about it, and actually I'm thinking seriously about having to give up this voluntary activity, because I actually feel totally trapped in Brentford. And to be told, oh, there's nothing we can do about it, I find is not acceptable. Because there are some things which are discretionary. And actually, one of them you mentioned was CS9, the C9, and that is a discretionary thing which the council could have proposed, you and the council could propose to delay for 12 months or so while everything else was sorted out. Now, I'm not saying that's the best thing, but I think there are other things that could have been done. And I think my real disappointment is, it appears that nobody's it just shrug your shoulders, let all the people of Brentford get stressed, and not worry about them at all. And I think it's partly political, and it's partly just, officers, not actually addressing the issue which people really feel strongly about.
So am I right in seeing that your question is about the cumulative nature.
Yes, it's the accumulation. Just saying, oh, it's a perfect storm. Well, you know, we have to deal with perfect storms in life. We don't just let them go. We actually do things to compensate for them. We actually make changes because of them. And I think that is my real issue, is everybody's sitting around there very, very complacent that in 2 years' time it's all going to be over. By that stage, some of us have given up things we loved doing, other things, because of the difficulties of doing it.
Okay. So if we could have a response on the cumulative nature of all the roadworks. Catherine, do you want to come in first?
Yeah, so I don't think it's fair to say that nothing's been done. So Jefferson started with 2 schemes where we have done things, or maybe didn't start with them, I can't remember what order we did. But so the temporary road traffic signals on London Road at the Ham were removed, and that was following representations from residents, both those living on the Ham and also others affected by the problems that was causing with the traffic. And we, as a council, we moved to quickly to monitor what was happening. Could we remove the signals, and remove the signals? So that was something where we did take action. And then on the ones we don't have control over, we are in discussions with the other agencies, with TfL, with National Highways. We can't always guarantee an outcome, but you know, because of those discussions, things have moved on. Windmill Road is now reopened, and National Highways have realised that the way they've dealt with us, with the council and by extension the residents of the borough, hasn't been good enough, and have committed to do better in future. So I know there's still issues, but where we can act, we have done that. Take your point about C9, but I mean, do you really want roadworks going on for another year or so after? But there may well be something else then, Paul. I mean, there's no perfect answer.
I value your question, Paul, but I do want to avoid a back and forth because there's lots of other people who do have questions. Sabine or Jefferson, did you want to come in on that, or are you happy with Catherine's response? Great. Gentleman here.
Hi there. I'm Don Hayward from Windmill Road. Unfortunately, I look out of my bedroom window in the morning on the north side, that is north of the A4, and there's stationary traffic there. Now, the letter that we got recently from National Highways implied that they may well restart work on the western piers because they'd used the wrong type of concrete, which might mean that some of it has to come off and go back on again, I guess. A, is there an update on that? B, you mentioned that all the works were removed as part of the Queen's funeral. Actually, they were taken down again for the coronation, weren't they? To coincide with the coronation, which is much later. And during that period, you could see that with the phasing of the lights as they're provided at Ealing Road roundabout, the traffic builds up on the A4. You can't squeeze quarts out of a pint pot. And if you have separate phases for north and southbound on Ealing Road, there's not enough time for the A4 traffic to get across. Now, you don't have to sort of wait till everything's finished to see that. It's obvious. You don't even need a simulation for it. It's blindly obvious. And it happened when all the works were removed, yet we still had that poor phasing. So, last thing, I did put forward a proposal, which would be quite simple, I believe, to move the lights on the A4 approaches to that roundabout back about 6 car lengths from the roundabout, and then you could treat it as a roundabout, but with those lights perhaps calling every 2 minutes, it would give a chance for the north-south traffic to come through, just treating that roundabout as a roundabout with no lights at all. And I think that wouldn't cost much money to do. It would provide us with nice pelican crossings that automatically call whether there's someone there or not on the approach side, and provide an opportunity for north-south traffic to compete and get onto the roundabout from Windmill Road. So, from Ealing Road. So, three things.
You've cheekily got 3 questions in there, so we'll let the officers answer.
Can you remember them?
Thank you, sir. The idea you've just explained is certainly innovative, but as I explained previously, it's not in the gift of the council to determine. That's entirely a decision for TfL, and that's a matter for them. We may make suggestions and make recommendations, but ultimately it's the network. They decide what infrastructure is put in place. With regard to the point about the number of schemes or number of works taking place all at the same time and the effect it's having on the network, I think that that's a reasonable question. But what I'll put back to you is that the investment we have, if you take C9 for example, we are competing against a number of other authorities across London for investment. Thankfully, we have benefited from investment on our cycleway network, and that's something I think will serve the borough well for many, many years to come. If we were to decline progress in C9, given that we've completed the first phase in Chiswick, second phase, and the third phase, we're now onto the fourth phase, there is a risk, and I wouldn't put it any stronger than that, but there's a risk that funding could be reallocated elsewhere in London for schemes that are ready to go. We're not the only schemes, and there's no guarantee that investment will return when we are ready. It's probably a risk. That's worth pointing out. With regard to, okay, right. I think that's probably worth addressing. But in regard to the Western Works and to whether it will return, I'm not aware of any plans for that to return. The intention is for the work to be stopped on the 9th of December, and every other work that be carried out, both the testing of the concrete, will be done without any disruption to traffic. So that should carry on, but without any impact on traffic.
Yeah. Sorry, you don't need a complex simulation or wait till all the works have been completed to know that phasing of traffic lights isn't going to work, because it didn't work when all the pier work infrastructure was removed for the King's coronation.
Yes, but it is reasonable that before you do any intervention, that you come back to a steady state. You don't make interventions when there are major works, disruptive works taking place on the network. That's not good engineering practice. So I take your point. It might seem obvious, but people who have to make investment and make changes to the network have to rely on evidence. You cannot get that evidence when you have major works taking place on the network.
Thank you, Jefferson. I know Guy wants to come in on this.
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing some of this, but it's a matter that's close to my heart, as Jefferson and Catherine know, and a lot of people in the room will know too. In my opinion, when I was in the early years when I was a councillor, I met TfL at Ealing Road Junction, and it was agreed that it needed to be fundamentally rejigged. And there was a scheme to do that was not continued. That was 6 years ago. And that's what it needs now. That's the only thing that will solve it. The timing of the traffic lights and the sequence of that is now not allowed, as we had it before. So we're going to be caught. We're going to continue with this problem until there's a fundamental improvement to that junction. And as far as I've written about 50 times to TfL and everybody else, got nowhere. I believe Catherine and Jefferson are working on it, but it needs TfL to play the game. The other thing is, I don't like the congestion, which is very bad, but it's also very dangerous. lots of people go up the wrong side of Ealing Road, in Ealing and in Hounds and in Brentford. And one day somebody's going to have a head-on or knock someone over on a crossing or whatever it is. And in any case, there's no crossing on the north thing of Ealing Road anyway. So it's a very bad, and it needs a new solution.
Thank you, guys. A question here at the front.
Hello there, it's Mark Kehoe from Brentford Voice. There's something that sort of suddenly sticks out. Because you're depending on grants from TfL, it's kind of blackmail, isn't it? You daren't dig in with them about any other issues in case you lose your funding. And it comes across as that. It might not be the case, but it certainly seems that way. Dare you take TfL on over other issues that are causing big problems? And the roundabout is one. I'll give you some history here. This is not the first time the A4 has had major
perhaps
work.
not, if it's right, not, because I know there's other people who want to ask and there's other things to go on. So if you could bring it to a question, that'd be great.
Right, well, the question is, they did extensive works on the flyover last 15, 20 years, all at night, far more extensive than the work they're doing at the moment, with none of the upheaval except late at night. It didn't last all day long. The second thing is closing Windmill Road just to put a welfare unit in when just 40 foot up the road widens out and you can put a welfare road, and the argument was we don't want our workers moving too far. That's something that just should be contested straight away. There's been lots of things that are not ringing true. The bus journeys, 55 minutes from Ealing to South Ealing.
Can you bring it to a question?
Going on.
Can you bring it to a question, if that's all right?
Well, the question is, are you going to get tough with the Highways Agency and TfL? Because I think they're messing you all about.
Are we going to get tough with the Highways Agency and TfL?
If I can comment, I mean, they have the control in this situation, so we can get as tough as we like, but we don't have anything. We don't have any leverage over them. So trying to work with them, I think, often is the best solution. But we do tell them what we think, and no, we're not worried about losing funding because it doesn't work like that. I mean, what Jefferson explained was that if funding has been offered, then yes, if you turn it down, you may lose it. That's different from saying if we complain about something unrelated, we're going to lose funding. That's not an issue. So we do say what we think, but unfortunately, saying what we think doesn't necessarily bring results because we're not the ones with the power. Exactly.
A question here from John Dale.
Yes, okay. The Council has a climate action emergency plan which involves discouraging and persuading people to stop using their cars on the roads by re-engineering them, of which, to a certain extent, C9 is obviously part of that. Are we now expected, or should car drivers expect, that this kind of congestion is the future, that it is, in effect, planned, deliberate, and permanent?
No.
Well, honestly, I don't think that's an adequate answer. C9 is plainly...
The answer to your question from me is no. If anyone else
yes, but there's
wants
other
to come in
people.
on that.
Like C9 is plainly re-engineering the roads to actually make it more difficult. Whether that is the plan, but it does make it more difficult for car usage, to dissuade people from using their cars, just like ULEZ does and other schemes do. So I think it's a perfectly fair question which deserves more than a simple negative.
The re-engineering is to encourage cycling, to make it easier for people to get around, safer. Yes, we want to discourage people from using cars. No, we are not deliberately engineering congestion. Congestion is caused by too much traffic on the roads.
Just to add to that, the reallocation of road space, or some part of the road space to cycling, does not necessarily stop people from driving. We have not closed the road. The road is still accessible for traffic. The construction-related traffic congestion issues Of course, you get that when you're delivering a major scheme on a local road. It's part and parcel of it, unfortunately. But as I said, we'll do everything we can to make sure that scheme is completed on time and on program. And
so much longer, so much more difficult to do.
Just wait a second, please, madam. Just let this answer come in. So the question was on the bus journeys
really
taking longer.
Yes, with it.
Why you're re-engineering the road and making
There's temporary disruption caused by roadworks. That happens whatever we're building. So.
Right, if you've got a question, we'd love to hear it. If you're going to attack people, you will be asked to leave.
That has actually implemented all the cycleway lines, okay? All right? We support that. No, it's not. Go back to Chiswick. No, it's not. Okay, I'll let you know now. What about all the emergency services that will stop? What about all the
If you've got a question, we'd love to hear it. But if you're just going to rant and have a go at people, then we're going to ask you to leave. Tell us a question, we'd love to hear it.
What's the improvement? What is the benefit of the cycleway line? What's the improvement of these green initiatives, like you, Councillor Dunn, that's been pushing forward? And let you know now, the mayor election is made. And let you know that I will do my utmost to make sure, as an ex-Labour supporter, you and your green initiatives are going to lose a lot of Labour supporters like ourselves.
Sadly, we're not up for re-election in May. But the question is, what is the benefit of cycle lanes and the benefit of green initiatives? Anyone like to answer that?
Well, the benefit of cycle lanes and other green initiatives is several-fold to enable people to safely cycle around the borough, to enable people to have a better walking and cycling experience around the borough, to improve things for public transport, for discouraging those, especially those shorter journeys, but certainly unnecessary journeys that don't need to be made by car.
Any other questions? So this gentleman here in the blue here, just at the front.
I'm finding it difficult to cross the road by the Beehive pub, the light controlled junction there, because of all the congestion on the high street. Vehicles trying to turn onto the high street are blocking the crossing, and you have to squeeze between vehicles in order to, even when you've got the green light.
This between Beehive and
Beehive in the high street.
And
Yeah, the vehicles block that junction, and although it's light controlled, pedestrians cannot get safely across there because vehicles trying to turn onto the high street. Can anything be done to improve that? Because people with prams or people with wheelchairs or even people elderly and slow on their feet are taking their life in their hands at that junction, really.
That's a great question. I've got a couple of people who want to... Jefferson, did you want to...
Yes, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I wasn't aware of that. That hasn't come onto my radar, but we'll look into it and see what we can do with TFL colleagues.
As a supplementary, the actual pedestrian phase to cross that road is just a few seconds. You've only got the pedestrian go-ahead for about 6 or 7 seconds before it goes. So,
okay.
That's not good enough,
That's a great question. I know Guy wanted to come in on that as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on, the last few days, there have been terrible problems. And those problems are not caused by Syon Line. They have nothing to do with Syon Line. They're due to the fact that they're putting a new sewer in to serve the new development at Heidelberg. And I talked to Hounslow Highways today, and they say that will be finished by the end of this week. And it was terrible at the weekend, and it's terrible today. But that's the reason. It's not to do with C9. C9 doesn't help, but that's not what's causing the serious delay on the high street.
Well, the sooner it can be fixed, the better, because people are taking their life in their hands. Drivers become impatient. They jump the lights there, and they don't leave a gap.
I do want to avoid a back and forth. Please take this up with any of the people you've seen here at the end of the meeting. I just want to let some other people come in with
I've already
questions.
raised it with your colleagues outside earlier.
That's fantastic. Any other questions? Right at the back, I think, is the first hand I saw.
Thank you. I just make a comment that... Yeah, Hounslow, I think, is after headlines. I don't think any of the thing you're doing actually is really benefiting the residents. I think that's aside from that. I look after my disabled wife. She's basically now confined in the house, really, because she can't walk, she can't cycle, and I don't think I am and she's on her own. There are many, many other people. And as I said, I will make an absolute request in terms of equality impact. You talk about all sorts of things. As I said...
Can you try and keep the microphone by your mouth?
Some of you might... I mean, I work for the London Borough of Hounslow. I don't know how it works. Essentially, things have changed. As I said, headline-grabbing schemes are actually now taken over. There are people actually starving. There are lots of issues around, but you're concentrating on something to just get a kudos about, I don't know, this and that, environmental, and none of it is backed up by science or actually evidence. You look at the Boston Manor cycle line.
Did you have a question? Did you have a question, sir?
The question is, have you done your impact assessment? One, and how we can get access to this. And secondly, this kind of issue of all is to our benefit and maybe 5 years down the line or 6 years down the line, then it just doesn't work. It hasn't worked.
Please keep the microphone by your mouth just so we can hear you.
Essentially, what I'm saying is, this is not helping anybody, and particularly in my case, my wife has not been able to go out because simply it's not possible.
So your question's on an equality impact assessment.
Absolutely.
Equality impact assessment on which?
What is all of this is about? Is about getting a name. Hounslow is the better or best council in the country.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards about your specific circumstances, but I mean, yes, equality impact assessments do take place for everything that we do. If there's specific difficulties for you getting out or for your wife getting out, happy to talk about how that can be alleviated. But I mean, obviously, if the issue is getting around by car, that happens. I mean, the reason there's traffic is because people are getting around by car.
You're actually going to stop people driving. Is that your ambition?
No, I just
Madam, if you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will ask security to remove you. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, it's unfair to all the people here. There are hands up. People have hands up. They have questions to ask. Please stop disrupting the meeting. That is the last time I warn you. If you do it again, I will ask security to remove you.
So we absolutely acknowledge that some people have to drive and that some journeys have to be taken by car. And, yours is a case in point.
I can drive, but I don't. The point is, I can hear me. I think the point is, well, it's fine. It's no point in recording or not. They don't care. They really don't care.
No. As I said,
our councillors.
I don't think we're going to solve this now, but I'm happy to talk to you about why it is.
I'm not happy to talk to you, basically, because there is no point in it.
Okay.
Well,
so the
there's no
gentleman
point not
here
doing.
in the blue coat, just with his hand up, was next.
Thank you. I was taken by what Councillor Dunn was saying, but I think she grossly underestimated what we need to do in terms of air quality and so on. Within Hounslow, within the High Street, with the best of the air measurements we've got, we are in breach of air quality standards for NOx and for particulates. We have been, as a country, we have been for over 10 years. The whole thing about low traffic neighbourhoods and so on is actually the government passing on its responsibility to local authorities to ensure that these air quality standards are met. Health is being affected by the emissions from cars, etc. What is proposed actually only goes some way towards actually meeting the requirements that we have to meet, and that I would encourage the Council to carry on doing that. My question for the Council is, how well are we doing in terms of actually meeting all these obligations? And I think it's fair to say that it's not about stopping cars, it's actually about improving the whole range of transport so that people can walk, so that kids can go to school.
Thank you. And can I just clarify your question? You said how well are meeting the obligations?
How well are we doing against meeting the air quality standards?
Air quality standards.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so air quality is improving over time in the borough, but it's clearly not as fast as we would like, which is why we need to try to encourage less car use. We're not anti-car, and one of our pledges, our manifesto pledges, and now part of our corporate plan is the rollout of EV charging points. So again, and this is where ULEZ comes in as well, to ensure that those cars that are on the road are less polluting. But less polluting cars, EV vehicles on their own will not solve the problems that we have. There is still particulate pollution from electric vehicles. The congestion that we're all, is upsetting all of us, will not go away if we just change petrol vehicles for electric vehicles. Health-wise, it's... Thanks. Yeah. And so how are we doing? Okay, but not good enough, and we really need to accelerate things. We're nowhere near, as you say, we're in breach of UK targets legally. We are nowhere near the revised World Health Organization targets, and so there's still a lot more that we need to do.
Thank you, Catherine. The lady in the green, and then...
Sorry, hi, good evening. I actually have forgotten my question, but sorry to forget. Sorry. Actually, what I was going to say, I have the joy of living in the borough and working in the borough. I work for the NHS, and one of I think mine's more of a suggestion, because it's taking my staff twice as much to reach the patients in the borough of Hounslow. And one of the things I don't think Hounslow does very well is communicate with our comms in the NHS. So the traffic started and the work started in the bridge, and I appreciate that you have to do what you have to do. You need to get on with what you want to get on. But life doesn't just stop there, and Richmond are very good with communicating with us. When there's a game going on, we know. When the roads are closed, we know, because they update our comms office. And I suppose my appeal is, can we have that same information to the NHS? Because staff, we have to answer category 2 calls after LAS. It takes us double the time to get to the patients in the borough. We're having to cover such a wide span, and we don't have a choice. We have to drive because we carry equipment. That's one of the requisites. So I suppose my suggestion is, please be aware that there are a lot of NHS staff workers that are in the borough. I live and work in the borough. I manage a very big team, but I can't, staff are coming back and it's taking us twice as much. My other question, I'm so sorry, is the road off South Ealing, I think it's Chestnut Road. There's a right turn sign on that road, but people are constantly, which says do not turn right. And what people are doing, and there's a school, and what people are doing is they are turning right. Somebody almost got knocked off his bike 2 weeks ago. Is there a way of putting a camera there? Because all those roads that you've blocked off Occupational Lane, and then you've made Chestnut Avenue, I think, a no right turn. But people are still turning right, and what they do is they come out and they turn round.
So you've cheekily sneaked in 2 questions, which I'll allow.
I have, thank you.
But Jefferson, did you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your suggestion and your question. To the first one about NHS, we have an extensive list of stakeholders that we engage with on all our projects. I will do a review of that list to make sure that you are, or the local NHS team is on the list if they're not there already. But that's a very fair suggestion, and perhaps we should be communicating a lot more with you. So thank you for that. In relation to Chestnut Road, we can deploy mobile camera units at that location, but the problem we have with mobile camera units is they are very effective as a deterrent when they are there. But the moment they're not there, they are no good because people can see them, they're very visible. So that's something we can look into. I don't think there's a case for having a permanent camera there as yet. We can look into that. But I think what best we can do at that point is to deploy mobile camera units at key times. That we can do, but I cannot promise that we will have a permanent fixed camera at that location.
Thank you, Jefferson. We had a question just here. Is it about pigeons?
No, don't take the rise.
No,
That's very serious. The question I want to ask, to be a pedestrian in Brentford High Street is an absolute nightmare. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's mentioned about at the Beehive. But what I'm concerned about is, do the developers approach you traffic people when they want huge delivery? Right, you go down the high street, down to that by St Lawrence's Church, there's works going on in there, and the juggernauts come out backwards. They come out backwards. Now, I'm not a driver, but...
Is this the road? Is this the road?
Opposite cost cutters.
So this is just where you come out of the Morrison's car park,
well,
that road?
That in itself, if you're walking down Brentford High Road, you think you're safe, and before you know it, a car's turned round in the High Road and gone up that road into Morrison's. I'm talking about opposite cost cutters, next to the Lawrence's Church where they're developing. They back out. They back out and pay cost cutters. I'm surprised their windows haven't gone in. We have it in Dock Road. They back out into the road. Now, and Heidelberg. If you are a pedestrian, you've got nowhere to walk on the right. So I want to know whether the developers approach you people to say, we're going to do deliveries, and as you said, why can't deliveries be done at night, in the night, when there's hardly anybody walking around?
Thank you. So just for Jefferson, I think the majority of sites you're talking about are live building sites, and you're talking about the delivered materials to and fro.
They're live building sites, but I mean, they automatically shut by Heidelberg the road. We had nowhere to walk. Nowhere to walk.
I was just wanting to clarify for Jefferson so he can answer your question in the best way possible. Jefferson.
Thank you very much for your question, and I completely agree with you. That is. Okay, I will try. I completely agree with you. I think you're right. That sounds very dangerous, and we shouldn't. That's not acceptable. We'll take it up with our planning colleagues who are empowered to enforce that. So we'll speak to our planning colleagues as well as our highways maintenance colleagues as well.
Thank you. Julie at the back.
Well, I was going to say another question, but I'd like to come in where that lovely lady talked about. It's Chestnut Avenue. Turning a right, I brought up at this meeting a few months ago of how dangerous it has got. That is because, due to COVID, Occupation Lane was shut down. That would halve the traffic if we opened Occupation Lane again. The road to turn right, people who live actually on the estate has literally 2 roads to get in and out. People who live up the top end of the actual Claypons Avenue...
Julie, is this Chestnut, is this the same point that was raised?
Yes, this is what this lady was saying, and we totally
can I ask
agree.
you, I appreciate the extra information. Can I ask you just to be brief, because you're a little bit on time.
What we want to know is, why has it even been put there? Because Mercedes are loving it, because they do U-turns and everything. Why can't we just have it removed, or even looking at reducing the traffic by reopening Occupation Lane? And even the NHS would agree with that.
Thank you, Julie.
That scheme was made permanent a while ago now. And if we were to remove it, that would require agreement by both parties, both Ealing and London Borough of Hounslow, because it's very close to the boundary and it has cross-borough implications. I'm afraid that there is no intention at the moment to reverse that scheme. In fact, we're looking to make the occupation lane scheme permanent. So we're looking to introduce permanent measures there during the early part of the new year. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that scheme is there to stay.
Okay, so I think we've got one here and one here who haven't spoken. Lady in, is it watermelon, the colour of your shirt?
God, yes. Quick question. Why is the TfL not here today? Why didn't we get anyone from the TfL? I would really like to know that. And then the second question was again I'm sneaking in a second one. Ambulances, police cars and fire brigades, sorry. Do we have an impact statement, how late they are to their calls? Do we have anything like this, any numbers?
Sure.
Because
so the question on TfL, I did contact TfL, well actually, Bill did, I think. We asked them to come. They came back saying we can't come. I pushed back saying it's really important that you come. This is all about traffic and you're a key part of that. And they said, I'm sorry, no one is available. And you can't force them to come. You also had a question on, has there been an impact assessment on the times of fire engines? And police cars and ambulances.
I'll preface my comment by saying that on all these schemes, as part of our statutory consultation, the fire service, the police, the ambulance service are statutory consultees. So we have to consult them before we implement all our schemes. So they have an opportunity to express any concerns that they may have. We have on most of our schemes, they're generally quite supportive. And we've not had any representations that I can remember from either of those organizations.
We really need to avoid the back and forth arguing because we're already running a bit tight on time. Marina, I know you wanted to come in.
Yes, please, Dan. At the most recent JOSC meeting that was held on the 5th of December at Hounslow House, which is the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, there was a presentation from London Ambulance that was saying that they are actually meeting Cat 1 and Cat 2 targets. So although there may seem there is a perception of delay for Cat 1 and Cat 2s, there actually isn't.
Thanks, Marina. So is Debbie over here?
Thanks, Dan. Am I allowed to not have a question? Sorry.
I know you'll be brief, as you always are, Debbie.
I was the lady from the Ham who stood up at the last meeting and pleaded for the traffic lights to be removed because they were causing absolute chaos at the west end of the high street. I have to say, councillors listened. We had to wait a while they did their impact and assessment and saw what the traffic was doing. And then all of a sudden I went out one morning and they'd gone. So I have to say publicly thank you. I've met Jefferson for the first time tonight. Dan's wife thinks he's having an affair with somebody down the Ham because he's spending so much time down there. And I know Catherine had something to do it, but Julie, keep going. It does work. They eventually do listen. But yeah, I feel for all the people up on South Ealing Road, but they did look at the traffic. They did admit the traffic lights weren't needed and they got taken out. So it's a public thank you for that. So no question, Dan, sorry.
Thank you, Debbie. I'll forgive you not asking a question. It's just so nice. We've just got 1 or 2 minutes left on this. Any more questions on traffic for Jefferson and Sabil? Perfect timing. Okay, Lara's just going to say something about a consultation that is taking place at the moment.
Thank you. Also, just before the consultation, Catherine, thank you so much for helping us with all of the questions on traffic. All of us have equal responsibilities on this. All of us have emailed TfL and National Highways countless times. I think Guy said 50, but he sent a lot more emails than that. Marina and I have sat on overview and scrutiny committees where we have reviewed traffic schemes, we have reviewed C9, so all of us have collective responsibility on this, and I know that Catherine, because of her expertise and cabinet portfolio that she holds, speaks on this more often, but we're all equally responsible for this, so it's not fair to attack one person on this. But on more exciting news, the Council has a Safer Community Strategy consultation, which is asking for your views on how to make Hounslow a safer place for us to live, work, and even travel. And they've got some suggestions on priorities, including residents being less affected by serious crime, young people and adults not being exposed to crimes. But you can also comment your own priorities to make Hounslow a safer place. And when you walk outside, there are some forms that you can fill in and just leave it at the table, and the team will take it home with them, well, take it back to the council. So please just spend 5 minutes filling it in.
And if they're in a rush, can they scan the QR code?
They can scan the QR code, but the deadline is the 21st of December, so please consider doing it tonight.
Thank you. Okay, so the next section is the open forum. I've warned you about disrupting the meeting. Yeah, and I didn't call on you. You didn't. You spoke out. If you keep interrupting the meeting, there are people who haven't spoken who have a question. If you keep interrupting the meeting without being asked to speak, I will ask security to remove you. I don't want to do it, but I will do it. There are people here who haven't asked a question. We're now moving on to the open forum. So this is for questions not just related to traffic. Does anyone have a question for the open forum? Gentleman here in the blue.
Population in Brentford due to all the new developments. Is the council, in conjunction with the health service, addressing the need for increasing GP services and other services for the local population?
Thank you. That's a great question. So the thing that most often comes up with this is GPs and schools as well as other stuff. Now, the interesting thing on schools is we're actually seeing a falling demand for schools. So we're not looking to increase any schools, and the admissions team actually track that really, really closely. The thing with GP surgeries, it's not just as straightforward as saying you need to build a GP surgery. Because you can build a GP surgery, but if you don't have the staff to fill it, it becomes useless, and that has actually occurred. I think it's in Great West Quarter, isn't it? The developer, in the consultation, they said we want a GP surgery, so they built them a GP surgery, state-of-the-art GP surgery, but we couldn't get any GPs, or the NHS or primary care couldn't get any GPs in it. I believe it's now a private healthcare facility, which has, I would say, less benefit to the community. So developers have to make contributions, and those go into, there's two types, Section 106, which is sort of infrastructure upgrades, and then there's the community infrastructure levy, which goes to sort of bigger projects. And in fact, West Middlesex are building a new ambulatory diagnostics building, and I think the council gave £1 million towards that, which came directly from the developer tax. So the short answer is yes, it's a complex process, and there are challenges and problems, but the short answer is yes. Does anyone else want to come in on that? Oh. If you want a better answer, read the minutes from last meeting. Is there anyone who hasn't asked a question who wants to ask one before we start coming back to people? I'm happy to come back to people, just want to make sure that no one... Jim Storrow, was that your hand? I don't think you've asked a question.
Thank you, Dan. I don't think I can roll this into one question, but I've got three issues relating to just outside the front door here of the church. One is, do we know what that pile of building materials is in Back Lane, where that's going? Second one is, any news on the future of the former Morrison site? And thirdly, what on earth is happening on the Waterman's Arts Centre and the future of? I don't want to compromise any issues of commercial sensitivity, and understand that the housing market is in a very, very parlous state at the moment. But what are the intentions in relation to what the Waterman's Arts Centre? What facilities do you intend, or does the council intend to put in there? Or do Waterman's have a business plan? Yeah, that's lots, but they're all just outside the door here.
So we've got the building materials stacked up
The
behind
building
the police
materials,
station,
the future,
Morrison's,
yeah.
the future of Waterman's Arts Centre.
Yeah, yeah.
Rhys, do you want to come in on Waterman's?
On the plans for the Waterman's, Jim, the aspirations haven't changed. The aspirations are to provide a new arts centre on the police station site, funded by the housing above that site and the housing on the Waterman's site. That remains the plan, and is sort of what everyone's been working towards. Obviously, the board of Waterman's have been very closely involved all the way through, and they're very supportive of this plan. So it's trying to get to a point where you have a viable scheme, and as we've discussed many times before, that has become much harder recently, and that will also explain why the Morrison site isn't moving forward as much as we'd like. The fact is development takes a very long time to come forward, and plans often get approved in one type of economic environment, and then by the time they get around to thinking they might want to start, the environment's changed. Fact is, borrowing costs are up, labour costs are up, resource costs are up, land values continue to go up, and as a result, things that were viable 5 years ago are not quite as viable anymore, and that means that we are not stuck, but we are still trying to find a way through to a viable scheme.
Thank you. Does anyone want to come in on we've done Waterman's, we've got Morrison's. In relation to the building materials out there, we're not sure who it is, but I've asked the relevant ward councillors to raise it as casework to come back to you. Guy, did you want to come in on Morrison's?
Yeah, I can't say anything definitive about Morrison's, but I've been talking to the landlord who now owns the site where where Morrison's used to be. I talked to them a couple of weeks ago. They're in contact with 3 potential tenants to take that store and restart it, but they haven't. They were hoping before Christmas to come to a conclusion. I said, I don't know who they are. I said, I don't suppose it's Fortnum and Masons or anything like that. I have my theory about who it is. I think it's from either Germany or Iceland, the 3 of them. But I'm actually just going to try and talk to her again tomorrow So if there's any update.
Yes. Wait for the mic.
Whilst we're waiting for the Morrison site, I thought L&Q had bought that site from Essential Living. So obviously L&Q have gone bust, have they? That's number one. Meantime, could not that car park be turned temporarily into either a football pitch for kids or baseball or somewhere for the children, the young children and young adults to play in an open space, because that site is going to be empty for a long time, and we should have somewhere for young adults to kick a ball around or have a skate park.
Thank you, Margaret. So, yeah, I believe the developer has pulled out of that particular programme. In terms of that being turned into a skate park, temporary one, I mean, of course, that would be wonderful, but that is private land owned by a private developer. Okay. Are you offering... Yeah, I think that would be amazing. That is someone's private land, and they're actively looking to actually bring hopefully a value supermarket to Brentford, which I think would be great for lots of residents. So I don't think we'd have much joy in that. Gentleman here. Run, Emily, run.
Another one over there in a minute.
Thank you. Very quick one. A number of local authorities have gone and served Section 114 notices, effectively declaring themselves pseudo-bankrupt. What's the position with Hounslow, please? Thank you very much.
Well, I think we might have another comment on this. One thing I will say is our finances have been absolutely fantastically managed. We recently lost Clive Palfreman, who just did an incredible job. Things are going to be tough on the budget. They are going to be tight going ahead. There's not much light at the end of the tunnel in the national economic picture. But in terms of the stability and the security of our finances, they are in really good shape. That's what I'd say. But
yeah, so just to come in on that, Dan's absolutely correct. We're not in that position, and I say that with confidence. Doesn't mean we're not making difficult decisions, doesn't mean we're not making cuts. We're having to cut our budget, as is every other council in the country. But we're not at that stage where we're about to fall over. We have a reasonable reserves position, and that has seen us through, as has prudent investment and so on. But, I mean, you only have to look at the number of councils that are in trouble to, I completely understand why we get asked questions about this and how worrying it is for people in those areas where councils have had to issue the notice and been effectively taken over, and you're seeing services just being slashed. So I'm very pleased to say that we're not in that position, because I think it would be heartbreaking if we were to be.
Andy.
It's a question probably for Reece, I don't know. But just going back to the Watermans and the viability, I understand everything you're saying makes sense to me. But does that mean, to make that site viable, that maybe the local plan will be maybe stretched a little bit to make that development even bigger?
I have to say I'm not close enough to it to be able to, I don't think I could confidently comment on that. What it is the scheme will have to change somehow to make it viable. And I think they're looking at it in lots of ways, but I think the reassurance point to Jim and to yourself and to anyone else, is that the aspiration to have a new arts centre on the police station site remains unchanged, and anything we do will have that at its core.
It's the gentleman here. There we go.
Hello. There are one or two, I wouldn't call them hot spots, but they're flooding wet spots, if you like, around the area, one of which is quite near my house, and I can get my cellar flooded. I've been on about this in discussion with Catherine Authors, your flood consultant. But there seems to be a bit of a standoff between the council and, well, you know, Houser Highways and Thames Water, because nothing appears to be moving forward on it. But I think there's another couple of places as well, one of which was down by Kew Bridge. Have they fixed that one? Is there any progress on flood mitigation?
Guy, do you want to come in on that? Flood. So the sites were Kew Bridge, and you said near your house. Is that Windmill Road? So the question is on the flooding on the junction of Windmill Road and White Star Road, and the flooding on Kew Bridge.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting more and more deaf, so I couldn't hear what you said. Yeah, in terms of floods, it's been very wet recently, and that has not helped. There are the drains in Brentford have got some problems because Thames Water don't invest in them. The most recent one there's a couple that I've investigated recently. One was to do with White Star Road, where they actually, I believe they dug it up a few weeks ago, but when they got the drain up, they found it was full of concrete, which doesn't exactly help to let the water flow away. The other one, so they're supposed to be going back. I don't know whether they have yet. But that, you know, I had that from the horse's mouth, as it were. There was quite a lot of flooding along the high street, which people say, oh, it's because the drains are blocked. No, it's not that. The drains are not blocked. Very occasionally they are, but usually they're not. They just don't have the capacity to take the amount of water that's going down. I had a spat with John the other day because for 20 years there's been a huge flood at Kew Bridge. And when I first became a councillor, I had an argument with the authorities about what was happening there. And they basically said there's nothing we can do about it because what happens when it's a high tide, there's a sluice that opens and it lets the water in from the river. And then it won't go out again until it evaporates. Now, so one thing that's changed is that you don't get that flood there anymore. You still get a big puddle, but you don't get a flood that stays there for weeks, which is what you used to get. And the reason for that is that we put the Cycleway 9 in. I say we did, TfL did it, and they re-engineered it underneath the road. So we will not, touch wood, have sort of serious floods there anymore. But I mean, there is a problem with the capacity of the drains, and that there's something called SUDS, which is which we're negotiating with the whole borough about. But as far as I'm concerned, the issue is actually particularly White Stile, but also Windmill and Orchard and Glenhurst, because there's an acknowledged problem there which might get very serious.
I know Catherine wanted to come in on this.
So I was going to come in on SUDS, which is sustainable drainage systems. As Guy said, we are doing a project across the borough identifying sites for SUDS, actually with funding from Thames Water. So they are doing something right, but it would be good if they would also invest in sorting out the drains. But ultimately, we want less water going down the drains, and to do that, that's where the SUDS comes in. So it's basically where the water soaks into the earth rather than running off at a surface level and going down the drains.
Great. And the lady here.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you. Right,
I actually moderate one of the community groups in Hounslow, and I did tell them about this meeting tonight, and a number of them, especially one, actually said he couldn't come because it's been in a church. I'm just wondering, in future, can you consider a non-religious venue, especially in current times right now, and that? Because I think you are deterring. I'm looking at here, this is really sparsely attended compared to the Chiswick Forum, okay? Listen, and don't talk about, I'm not talking about religion and that, I'm just saying it needs to be for future reference and that, I think you do need to look at a non-religious venue because this is a sparsely attended forum. There should be a lot more people attending this. I mean, Chiswick is near enough full to the brim as such. So please, can you consider a non-religious venue in future? I'm just saying, I'm a Christian myself. It's got nothing to do with faith,
Sure.
but you
So
are deterring people.
I take that question very seriously, and it's really important.
Yeah?
I'll let you come in a second, Julie. It is really important that everyone feels comfortable and feels able to access something like this, which should be for everyone.
I know what you mean, but it's
excluded.
not. But
The
it's
challenge, if I can answer, then you can come back if you want. The challenge is there is now a dearth of publicly available buildings, and churches are often one of the few ones available. There's not very many places in Brentford where we can hold this. We could look at the Holiday Inn, but that comes with a very high cost. So I do take that question very seriously, and if there's any, I'd go on the record as saying if there's any Brentford resident who feels unable to attend the area forum because it's in a church, I would encourage them to contact me directly. I would really, really like to hear them. I do take that point very seriously.
I will let them know.
Julie, did you just want to come in and say something?
Hi, can I reply to the previous question? A, you live in Chiswick. We in Brentford are more than happy because our last meeting was in the Free Church and the actual room was full. If you like to think about it, it is 4 days to Christmas and we all have a lot of others. If you do not like us being what we're talking about, do not come because we don't come to your Chiswick. No, we don't go to Chiswick.
Okay.
Upsetting
Julie,
your Chiswick.
I appreciate
So please take heed in what we're saying.
I appreciate your vote of support. My previous comment does stand there. If there's any Brentford resident who feels uncomfortable coming to the area forum because of a church, I'll go on the record, please contact me directly. Says the lady in green's got her hand up.
One sec, I've got one here. Yeah?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, with the private, well, they are private flats and all the flats that are being built in Brentford and the surrounding Ealings, how much, I suppose the word is not power, but how much clout does the council have? Because we have sometimes difficulty getting into these properties and parking access. And we've had problems whereby we've been ticketed and workers have been ticketed. And we've been told...
You're talking about the access for the NHS staff?
Yeah. People that work
Can you
in
be a bit more... Is it into gated communities?
Most of all the properties around. So the one in the Hounslow Road, where the Ford garage used to be, opposite those flats, we were told it was private land, and 2 of my staff were ticketed. One of them is still, I think, going through the court. We've appealed. We do appreciate the fact that you've allowed us to go into certain roads and taken off the camera on our license plates, but it's still not enough because the problem we have is we have to carry equipment, and when we carry this equipment, there's only certain places we can park. We can't.
So the question, I'm just wanting to just clarify, the question is about vehicle access for NHS staff.
Yes, and parking.
It's parking.
Parking, yes, because a lot of these estates, the new flats, we are told that they are privately owned grounds. So how do we access for patients? Because it's just becoming impossible.
Sorry to jump in. I mean, someone else might want to. Yeah, that's a tricky one. So if it is a privately owned private land with a private parking contractor, then that's not something the council would have any influence on. So you know, if you're visiting a resident in one of those blocks, then they need to arrange that you can have visitor access, however that works within their private scheme.
But in answer to your question, there's very little the council can do in terms of helping with that. I know Marina just wanted to come in. Just let Marina come in.
Hi. When you say you're going to the residents' houses, are you HRCH? Are you district nurses? Right. So, rapid response. So, with regards to the private properties, say for example, housing associations, and I think, are you talking about the one behind Pears Road, down Pears Road?
Pears Road, not just Pears Road, across the borough.
Right.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's across the borough. Yeah. So, with some of our residents, if they are having social care provided, they can actually apply for a carer's permit that they can give to the district nurse or to their carers that are coming in or to their support worker that comes in.
Yeah, but we do have permits. That's the thing. We already have permits, but we're still ticketed.
Okay.
And we have brought this issue up before.
It might be because it is on private land then.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but sometimes it's not clear to us, and so we don't know, because it doesn't say it's private land. We get there, we get the ticket, and then we're told it's private land. So we don't know. So at the end of the day, it is frustrating for the staff to have to pay tickets for where it's not clear, but these properties are in the borough of Hounslow.
I think it is incumbent on the residents to let you know that what the parking arrangements are. You know, if they're on private estate and there's parking arrangements in place, I mean, we wouldn't know about that as the council either.
Well, I mean, if you're a patient who is got some form of sickness and or dementia, you're not going to be able to let us know. That is quite difficult, because at the end of the day, most of these properties are adapted. Most of these properties, they're moved into them. So often enough, they don't know.
Can I suggest we take this offline? I think there's quite some complexities just to it, and I've just got a little bit of time. It's not to shut you down. I think you might be better served more detailed response. There's a gentleman here had a question. Cool. If you just wait for the mic, if that's all right.
Yeah, sorry. It's kind of linked to that point as well. I've listened to the whole forum, and I understand that in various areas there's hurdles dealing with residents and viewpoints and whatnot. But what the lady in the green, on both her points, she's clearly on the front line with care, and there are a range of patients who need care, and we are seeing new developments pop up everywhere. Those new developments, whether it's private land, private contractors or whatever, need planning permission from the council. And if we're in a situation where our NHS staff are being almost handicapped, whether they've got to take equipment or whether they can't find parking, and delaying service, getting back, and then on top of that, we know what happens. You get a £60 fine, you try and contest it, it gets sent to a debt collector, they're getting knocks on the door. We know exactly how the system works. I can personally, as a resident, accept a lot, but I don't think that's fair at all. And I think planning committees can put pressure and make it within contracts, because ultimately when there's a new development, like we've got Ballymore or whatever, you guys have to, or the organisation has to sign that off. And if it can become a prerequisite that, hang on a second, if you want the development signed off, fine, if you're going to tear down a heritage site, you're going to take away shops or whatever, the bare minimum we can request or put in is that our frontline staff have a right free passage to attend to the people who are most vulnerable and in need of care.
Thank you. Reece, do you want to... Oh, Marina first and then Reece.
Yeah, no, I understand completely what you're saying, but to be able to actually, police who is NHS staff, who is the frontline staff. That would be really quite hard, and I don't think that we would be able to actually stipulate, you know, Reece, correct me if I'm wrong, we would be able to stipulate that within the plans.
Yeah,
I
think that's right, Marina. I mean, the planning regulations are very extensive, and they cover lots and lots of things, and more things every year. It's a very complicated system, but this wouldn't fall within that. So, yeah, this wouldn't be captured within the existing areas that we can control. Though it's an interesting idea whether you can stipulate as a condition that there has to be, you know. Yeah.
They have private car parks for the people in those. I live in the new build myself. They've got private car parks. Those
Me too.
are built there. I don't think it'd be as difficult to set up a system, as you're saying, where there's a registration of a number plate or an application made from a caregiver to that resident saying, hey, we've registered with the council, we're part of the NHS, please don't.
I think what I'm saying is I agree with you, and there should be a system and there should be a way to work out a system. I'm not sure whether the planning committee would be the appropriate point or the planning process would be the appropriate point, but it does seem like there needs to be some way to work with managing. You know, every new development has a managing agent, managing estate management company. This should be something that can be worked out as part of visitor permits and all of those sort of visitor requirements.
It's no different to ensuring there's ambulance access, police access, or whatever. There was a fire, they'd be able to go in. But no different. Frontline workers, someone's suffering from dementia or whatever it may be, they need to have that access. And I think it's really peak that, you know, if you're getting tickets for doing your job, and we know these tickets are expensive, and they rack up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Perhaps, do you reckon we could get a response from planning from the questions the gentleman's raised? If you want to leave your details with us, they can go directly to you. They'll also be in the action tracker. Just say, I know some people are leaving, which is absolutely fine. If you do leave, please grab the feedback form and fill that in. So are there any more questions for the open forum? Yes, Paul.
I'm going to be like Debbie and not make a question but a statement. One thing I like about this building, it has the best induction loop system of anywhere I've ever been. So while I'm wearing my hearing aids, I can hear everybody perfectly while they're speaking through the microphone.
Thanks, that's great.
Best one
That's another reason. It's another reason we ask people to wait for the microphone, just so people can hear it, but also where it's being broadcasted. It's just down here, and then we have one more.
This one's a little bit broader based, and probably one or two people that may have been relevant may have gone. Brentford's into its third season in the Premiership, and Brentford's also into its third season as the worst place on earth to walk home from a game. I know Guy has made efforts to try and alleviate the appalling lack of lighting, but I took my father back, who's 88, and he's lucky enough to have a blue badge, so we parked in Lionel Road, which was just about his maximum walking distance. But it poured down with rain, and the A4 was totally impossible to cross. Pitch dark, puddles everywhere. Lionel Road has not been swept this year. There's a tiny little bit of pavement. To be honest, if I turned up with a broom, I could do it in 10 minutes. But it's awful watching people tripping and staggering all over the place. There are streetlights that don't work. The other week, there was a new initiative that came out, which is about the danger for women walking to the game. And two of my friends have been involved in it. They both go to and from the game, and they've said it's not just coming home afterwards, it's going to. They don't feel 100% safe. It's a great initiative, but we're 4.5 weeks now since that was launched, and nothing has happened. And nobody now at Brentford wants to talk about it after a fantastic launch. But it's not just women who are in danger. It's everybody who's either got a little bit, and there needs to be a bit more push just to get some of the street lighting sorted out. It's not just the TfL lighting that's bad. It's scattered all over the place, where there are dark patches
Guy
everywhere.
and Reece want to answer your question on this. So, Guy, go ahead.
Right, so I think you were talking about lighting underneath the M4, were you? Which is one of the... Okay.
They're still not working after 3 years. There's a few patches around Kew Bridge. There's little black holes all over the place.
Talk confidently about lighting wherever it is. Throughout the borough, we've got newish lights, and they're all working, 99% of them. Underneath the A4, you and I had this conversation years ago, actually, and I've had a series of conversations with TfL about it. TfL a year ago said they were going to fix it, and they did fix it, but only for a little bit around Lionel Road. They then said, they told me sort of 3 or 4 months ago that it was more complicated than they thought, and they were going to have to go to a procurement to get a solution. And I think they tried to do that, and meanwhile, our friends from National Highways came and took off the ones that were left. So there were a few left, but they all went as a result of that. I do follow up TfL every few weeks, so we put it that way, and they promise it's going to happen, but I'm not sure it's become a funding issue because it's quite a significant investment now.
Thanks, Guy.
In terms of Lionel Road, which of course is now in Chiswick, so I don't care about it, but if it hasn't been swept, then...
Luckily, John Dale's left.
How's the Highways to take a look at that?
Thank you, Guy. Reece, you want to come in as well?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, no, and as someone who walks to and from every game as well, I'm well aware of the challenges you're talking about. I think I've done the north route, going, up Lionel Road, then across the A4. I think I did it once before deciding that I wasn't going to do that route again, and I appreciate for many, many fans, there is no alternative route for them if they live north or they're parked north. So, and it's not great. I think this comes back to a few things. It's very much on my list to try and get everything from the bridge up to the A4 improved at some point, so that it's a much better walking and cycling environment. But then I think, as Guy's saying, there's fixing that whole route of lights along the A4. I know there's been talk before about putting lighting in Carville Hall Park South. I know that there's disagreements on whether that's a good option or not, so that's worth exploring as well. But I do think it's interesting we're finishing on a point where we're talking about the need for good quality walking infrastructure that's safe and creates a nice, safe pedestrian environment. We agree that those are priorities, and yeah, Brentford can be a little difficult. That's why we need some of the measures we're doing to actually make pedestrians a better environment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Reece. So, unless there's any burning questions, we're going to get Chris is going to come and talk to us about the Area Forum Action Plan. You look surprised, Chris. Were you expecting that? You're not expecting that. Are you happy to talk to us about the Area Forum Action Plan? Oh, Guy just wants to quickly steal your thunder, Chris. You're not going to talk about the Area Forum Action Plan, are you?
Something completely different, but it's a bit of hot news.
Okay.
I wrote to the person in the landlord about Morrison's whilst I've been sitting here, and she's responded to say that it's not Fortnum and Mason and it's not Harrods, but there will be a supermarket taking it over. They're just about to give them the keys, and they expect to start at the beginning of February in the old Morrison's site. So that's fantastic news as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Chris is just going to talk briefly about the action plans and how we're going to track that and what's that going to look like going forward.
Evening all. So my name is Chris Jarvis, one of your community development officers. So just briefly on the Area Forum Action Plan, just taking all your feedback and notes moving forward into the new year, and reasonably going through and what we can do to improve. I'm just hearing out your questions, but in terms of the tracker and kind of going through the information moving forward, I will work closely with the councillors to make sure your notes are kind of taken in, and if I can get you to also fill out the feedback forms just to help us improve our services, and for me to also work closely with the councillors so we can make sure our priorities are up to date. That's briefly. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, Chris. Okay, so next is agenda item number 5, the minutes of the meeting held on 2nd of October. Assume everyone's happy with the minutes. Agreed? Yeah. Agreed. Absolutely. Urgent business. Any other business? No, we've already had the hot news from Guy. The date of the next scheduled meeting is the 29th of February 2024.
Don't forget the survey.
Please fill in the feedback forms. And I guess last thing I have to say is have a Merry Christmas and see you in the new year. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Dan.